having a life scholarship and being able to afford to go to college made me feel inspired to go.
When I got a life scholarship, it was such a relief.
I knew that I wanted to have an impact. Having a life scholarship through the SC Education Lottery was huge. It gave me the opportunity to make that impact right here at home.
The South Carolina Education Lottery. A better you, a better us, a better South Carolina. Visit sceducationlottery.com/betteryou.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the info you send us, break it down, and pull out the key insights just for you. Today, we're getting into a really interesting Eastern Conference matchup. The Miami Heat taking on the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, this one's fascinating because fundamentally, these teams are just built so differently. They play differently. You've got the Heat, right? Their whole identity is just, resilience, tough defense. It's that Heat culture, largely shaped by Jimmy Butler, even though he wasn't like a main keyword in the source material.
Right, you can't talk Heat without Butler.
Exactly. And then, flip side, you have the Cavs. Super dynamic offense led by Donovan Mitchell's scoring punch, and they've got this mix of, young guys and more established players.
It feels like every time these two play, even in the regular season, it carries weight for the East. Playoff seeding, just, who's higher up the ladder.
Definitely high stakes. And the styles clash so much, that contrast, plus the individual player battles, it just makes for good basketball.
So for this deep dive, what are we really focusing on? What's the core mission here?
Okay, so the plan is to really dig into the strengths and the weaknesses of both teams. We'll look hard at key players. The source mentioned Donovan Mitchell, Tyler Herro, even a guy like Ty Jerome for Cleveland, what role he plays. And coaching strategies too, obviously. We want to explore where things might be headed, maybe looking towards the 2024-2025 season, hypothetically. We're not predicting exact game scores or anything, but the goal is to give you a really solid grasp of the dynamics when these two teams face off.
Okay, sounds good. Let's jump in with the Cavaliers then. And yeah, you almost have to start with Donovan Mitchell. He's the offensive engine. What makes him tick?
He really is. I mean, his offensive game is built around just an incredible ability to score. He creates his own shot. His drives are so explosive, puts constant pressure on the defense.
Constant pressure.
And that pressure forces rotations, opens things up for other guys.
So when we're zeroing in on his performance specifically against the Heat, what numbers or tendencies should we look at to really gauge his impact?
Well, obviously, scoring average against Miami is big, but also look at his usage rate, basically. How much of the offense runs through him when he's on the floor. His three-point shooting is always a factor, naturally, and maybe most telling is how he does in clutch situations against that tough Heat D. Does he step up, or do they find ways to slow him down when it matters most? That tells you a lot about the Cavs' ceiling in these games.
That makes perfect sense. Now, the source material also mentioned, rightly so, that Cleveland isn't just Mitchell. Who else is really crucial for them?
That's super important. Yeah, they need others to step up consistently. If we're thinking, say, 2025, you'd be watching Darius Garland's playmaking development, right? Evan Mobley's two-way game, his potential there is huge. And Jarrett Allen, inside his rebounding, his rim protection. Yeah. How well those guys complement Mitchell is key for Cleveland.
And defensively, what's Cleveland aiming for? What's their defensive identity supposed to look like?
Their goal, from what we understand, is to build a really strong defensive identity. Against Miami, with all their offensive options, that means, protecting the paint is critical. Contesting shooters on the perimeter, too. The Heat can score in so many ways, so the Cavs discipline, their communication on D, it gets really tested.
So evaluating that defense against Miami, beyond just watching the game, what metrics should we be paying attention to?
Team defensive rating gives you the big picture, yeah. But you also got to dig into the individual matchups. How do Cleveland's key defenders actually do against Miami's main scorers? Are they limiting efficiency? Forcing turnovers? Keeping them out of the paint? That deeper dive shows you where the real advantages or maybe disadvantages lie.
Gotcha. Okay, the source specifically brought up Ty Jerome. What's his role on this Cavs team?
Jerome's there for that valuable guard depth. He's known as a capable shooter, can make some plays. He gives them a different look off the bench. He can handle the ball, provide some stability, maybe even start in a pinch if needed, just adds versatility to their backcourt.
And how do we measure his impact, especially in these tough Heat games?
You'd look at his minutes, obviously, in those specific games. How efficient is he scoring? Is he taking care of the ball? That assist-to-turnover ratio is pretty important for a backup guard. And, are there moments where he really makes a difference against Miami? Hits a big shot, settles things down against their pressure. That stuff stands out.
All right, let's pivot. Time to dive deep into the Miami Heat. And like you said earlier, the source might not have focused on Butler, but you just can't talk about the Heat without him. He's the core, isn't he?
He absolutely is. He's Heat culture. Toughness, resilience, beats every single possession. He's dominant on both ends, and somehow he finds another gear in the playoffs. His impact on their defense, his knack for scoring in the clutch, it's just massive, especially against a team like Cleveland.
And then contrasting that, you've got Tyler Herro. He brings a different flavor of offense. How does he fit alongside Butler?
Exactly. Butler's the grinder, the force. Herro's the microwave scorer. He can create his own shot like nobody's business, legit threat from three. Gives them that scoring versatility they need. He's a really important offensive counterpunch to Butler's style.
So when Herro goes up against the Cavs, what should we be watching for in his performance?
Well, his scoring numbers, obviously, his percentages in those games. How does he handle the Cavs' perimeter defenders? Can he get his shot off consistently? Especially if Cleveland really keys in on stopping Butler, Herro's ability to generate offense becomes absolutely vital for Miami.
And defensively, the Heat are just consistently good, year in, year out.
Yeah.
What's the secret sauce there? What makes them so effective?
It's that tenacity, like we said, but also their adaptability. They're so well coached by Spoelstra, they can switch up schemes, they can adjust on the fly to counter whatever the offense is throwing at them. They just make it incredibly tough for opponents to get comfortable.
And like with the Cavs, it's not just the stars for Miami either. Who are some of those key role players, maybe thinking ahead to 2025 again?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to look at Bam Adebayo, his all-around game. Anchoring that defense is huge. Duncan Robinson, his shooting just warps defenses, creates space. And a guy like Caleb Martin brings that two-way energy and versatility. That depth is a massive strength for the Heat, lets them sustain that high level of play.
Okay, now for the fun part, the head-to-head. How much can we really learn from their regular season games about a potential playoff series?
Oh, you learn a ton. Those regular season games, they're like previews. You see the strategies they try, how they match up, who tries to exploit what. Things like home court, injuries, Spoelstra's adjustments versus the Cavs, coaching staff. It all plays out. You definitely see glimpses of the defensive schemes and offensive tweaks they'd likely use if the stakes were higher.
Let's drill down on some specific matchups. We talked Mitchell versus Heat Wings. Why is that such a make-or-break battle?
It's huge because if Miami can slow Mitchell down, even just make him inefficient, it really disrupts the whole Cleveland offense. You mentioned Butler, Martin, whoever draws that assignment, how well they stay in front, contest his shots, make him work for everything, that's critical. If Mitchell has to fight for every point, Cleveland often has to scramble for other options.
And flipping it, Tyler Herro trying to score on the Cavs' perimeter D. What's that dynamic look like?
Well, Hero puts a lot of pressure on guys like Mitchell, maybe Garland, whoever's guarding him.
Right.
Cleveland needs a plan for him. How do they limit his shot creation? How do they run him off the three-point line? Because if Hero gets going, gets hot, it stretches that Cavs defense thin and opens up everything else for Miami.
What about the point guard battle? Mitchell handles a lot for Cleveland, but how does that match up against the Heat's guards impact things?
It really dictates the flow, the tempo. Miami's guards, they want to pressure the ball handler, disrupt sets, maybe force some turnovers for easy buckets. On the flip side, the Cavs will be looking for any weak spots in the Heat's guard defense they can attack to get easier looks. It's this constant tussle for who controls the pace and initiates the offense effectively.
And inside, the Bigs Cavs front court versus Bam Adebayo. Seems like that's where control of the glass and paint scoring gets decided.
Absolutely. Bam is just so foundational for Miami. With his defense and his versatile offensive game, he's going to battle Cleveland's bigs for every rebound, try and lock down the paint. And Cleveland's bigs, they need to counter that. Find ways to score inside, crash the offensive glass, try and use their size. That interior battle is always physical.
Let's talk strategy. Offensively, what are the Cavs likely trying to do against that tough Heat defense?
They'll be hunting mismatches, for sure. Expect a lot of Mitchell in pick and rolls, trying to get him downhill, or create open looks for shooters if the defense helps too much. Good ball movement, spacing the floor, trying to find cracks in that Heat defensive wall.
And how about the Heat's offense against the Cavs' D? What's their likely approach?
You'll probably see a good amount of Butler operating in isolation or pick and roll, using his strength in playmaking. They'll want to get Herro looks, use his shot creation, and leveraging their shooters like Robinson to create space for Butler and Bam to operate inside.
Defensively, what's the game plan for Cleveland trying to slow down Miami?
Priority one is likely limiting Butler's drives, keeping him out of the paint, trying not to foul him. They have to contest Harrow's shots aggressively, and controlling the defensive glass is key, preventing those second-chance points that Miami can thrive on.
And last one on strategy, the Heat defense against the Cavs offense.
You'll see those adaptable schemes, lots of switching probably, trying to blow up Cleveland's actions, especially anything involving Mitchell. They thrive on creating turnovers, disrupting rhythm. They want to make Cleveland uncomfortable, force them into tough, contested shots late in the shot clock.
These Heat-Cavs games, they often feel like they have these wild momentum swings. What causes that? Why are they often so back and forth?
Well, it's partly just the high level of competition, right? Both teams play hard, but it's also the coaching. You see an early run.
Timeout. Adjustment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Spoelstra makes a tweak, the Cavs staff counters. Defensive pressure ramps up, maybe a key player hits a couple of big shots. All those little things can shift the momentum really quickly. Looking at how those swings happen, how teams respond, it really shows you the chess match involved in these games.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, Heat versus Cavaliers. What are the biggest takeaways? What have we really learned here?
I think the main thing is just how clear the contrast is. You got the Heat, defense, toughness, that culture. Then the Cavs. Offense first, dynamic scoring led by Mitchell. The key individual matchups, Mitchell versus Heat wings, Harrow versus Cavs perimeter D, those are always huge. And the coaching battle, Spoelstra versus whoever's coaching the Cavs, the constant adjustments. That's always a massive factor in how these games play out. It's just a really compelling matchup in the East.
Yeah, great summary. So for everyone listening, after hearing all this, which team style do you personally lean towards? Which approach is more compelling to you? And those player matchups we talked about, Mitchell versus Butler, Harrow versus Garland Mitchell, which one do you find most fascinating to watch?
And maybe one last thing to chew on, thinking about both teams, where they are, where they might be going. What do you think will be the absolute biggest factor determining who comes out on top when they meet in a really high-stakes playoff series down the road? Definitely something to ponder.
Having a life scholarship and being able to afford to go to college made me feel inspired to go.
When I got a life scholarship, it was such a relief.
I knew that I wanted to have an impact. Having a life scholarship through the SC Education Lottery was huge. It gave me the opportunity to make that impact right here at home.
The South Carolina Education Lottery. A better you, a better us, a better South Carolina. Visit sceducationlottery.com/betteryou.